Chapter 7. The Founders Market was located in the outer regions of the city. This meant that its area wasn't high class despite being wealthy. The Black Spider Market, on the other hand, I didn't think it was in the heart of the city. Even more that it would be clearly marked for the public to see. Besides the monolithic magic tower in the royal palace, there were several other skyscrapers around them, though they weren't as tall. I roughly counted 8 other skyscrapers that could compare in height. And one of those was the Black Spider Hotel. Many might see it and think it a mere luxurious hotel, a place for other diplomats or politicians to stay temporarily. But apparently it was a front for a much deeper reality. Plex led me into the hotel, and it was there that we met the receptionist. He was a man of average height and build, not looking special in any way besides his prim appearance and demeanor. But of course, no assumptions could be made about anybody associated with this place. "Ah, Plex. It's good to see you again. Making another delivery?" "Not quite, Keymaster. I'm actually here for my protege John right here." He pat my shoulder, prompting the Keymaster to nod toward me. "John, is it? I wish you luck during your session with the Polaris family." He smiled toward me as Plex put 2 coins on the table. Taking them, the Keymaster waved his hand. An owl was momentarily summoned on his shoulder. That big-eyed bird looked at me before looking down at the coins. Its eyes flashed, and then, the Keymaster placed the coins back on the table. Plex took one, and I took the other. The owl disappeared as I took the coin. "Welcome to the Black Spider Hotel. You have been granted entry. Here are the keys." He brought out 2 keys from seemingly nowhere, handing them to us. I felt its weighty significance and copper-like texture that was refined with masterful craftsmanship, giving it intricate yet sleek designs. After that, Plex said his goodbyes, as did I. We left for what seemed like an elevator. In fact, the entire first floor of the hotel was filled with elevators. At least a dozen of them filled the walls, and we quickly chose one before stepping inside. "Go ahead and insert your key." Plex said that as he did so. I could see 10 keyholes on one of the walls, so I picked one at random and stuck my key inside. "Turn to the right. Click asterisk." I listened to him and heard a noise. After that, a screen flashed above the keyholes. It showed 2 buttons. One had the number 3 on it, and the other was blank. "Remember this for the future." Plex spoke while pulling out his coin, looking at its surface. "Every day, the floor to access the Black Spider Market is different. The correct floor is indicated by your coin, so if you're going for the market, enter the number on the coin. On the other hand, if you're here for the hotel, click the button with the number 3 on it." "Okay." I pulled out my coin like he did and saw a number on it. Then I tapped the blank button, causing a dial of numbers to appear around it. I typed in single quote 82. Asterisk ding. Asterisk. With my input, the elevator made another noise as it began to move. Good. Just remember, only one person needs the coin, but both people need the key. That means you always go to the Keymaster first. Hence his name. Alright. Oh, and don't mess with the guy either. He may not look it, but he's the emissary for the entire Black Spider Market. Let's just say, if you happen to see him outside of that reception desk, something somewhere is seriously fucked up. Right. I just let out a sharp sigh. Seriously, you couldn't judge anyone by appearance here. It wasn't long before the elevator brought us to our destination. When it opened, I could see a luxurious hallway with a red carpet, chandeliers along the ceiling, and large paintings of what seemed like notable figures, both men and women. There were 2 people standing guard at the end of the hallway, both standing to the side of a set of double doors. They were wearing full-plate armor seemingly made of silver, their faces covered by intimidating but intricately designed helmets. We walked up to them, Plex taking out his coin while doing so. I also did, and upon seeing both, they pushed open the doors for us. And then, we were allowed into the Black Spider Market. Oh, I forgot this was today. What a coincidence. Plex let out a happy chuckle as we descended a small set of stairs, walking into a huge plaza. It was full of floating lights and colorful sprites that looked like fairies. There were men and women dancing within this plaza to the melodic beat of an orchestra playing within an open building. Their music, both upbeat yet complex in its musical design, had everyone laughing, smiling, and clacking the heels of their shoes to its rhythm. The atmosphere was intoxicating. I felt like jumping right in, joining all those strangers with passion and freeing enthusiasm. I could also smell the high-class alcohol, rich in flavor yet carrying an aroma of powerful ethanol. Plus, everyone was dressed so nicely, like it was some kind of public ball. They were also wearing masquerade masks that covered the top half of their faces, all of them designed with flamboyant feathers or designs. I felt out of place in that way. Even though I was in a suit, it seemed casual compared to the luxurious dresses and tuxedos of everyone else. I also didn't have a mask. This is Vatsy's Gala. It happens at the end of every third month, put on and paid for by one of the richest men in the damn world, Harold Vatsy. I'm surprised the Polaris family is having you come to them today. That or Patriarch Tavera is fucking with us. Seriously? He has a sense of humor, so it wouldn't be the first time. Let's just head over. Maybe whoever is supposed to meet you isn't drunk yet. Plex lead me through the plaza. We passed through wide open streets, most of which were filled with people who were passing through to other buildings nearby. Most buildings here were the highest class. Their entries were exotic, carrying flashing designs not unlike neon lights and statues or art. I saw some food establishments, but the majority of buildings were occupied by some sort of craftsman. There was even a library, which turned out to be one of the biggest buildings within the market. The only building bigger than that was the auction house. Plex explained to me that there was no safer place to be than within the auction house during the monthly auctions. And Vatsy's Gala was the party that came after the tri-monthly auction, which was the one that sold the most powerful and exotic items. The gala served as a major resting point, almost like a holiday, allowing everyone to get some much-needed entertainment. Of course, only those who could actually enter the Black Spider Market could participate. So the final day of every quarter year was full of chaos, money, and fun. It wasn't uncommon for hundreds of millions of coin to be passed around in the 24-hour period. After all, the things that were sold during the auction were nothing but the best. A small selection of exotic, world-shattering, or insanely luxurious items that caught the eyes of the elites. Of course, there were also numerous sets of things like gear or mass amounts of items that, while not incredibly rare or unique, were still valuable and hard to find. Many illegal items could be attained this way, and nothing lowly like the drugs passed through the Founders Market. It was a place I definitely wanted to know about, as apparently our delivery service was also responsible for moving some things for that auction. It was kind of amazing, the privileges afforded to us mere delivery men. The Black Spider Market wasn't huge, nothing compared to the Founders Market. After all, it was located in the city center behind the Black Spider Hotel. Besides the library and auction house, there were only a few dozen other buildings, along with the massive plaza currently hosting the gala. So it didn't take long to walk to the headquarters of the Polaris family. It was called the Polaris Gate, the entrance that led into the family's estate. And at first glance, the place seemed like a compact college campus. But it was almost entirely empty. Lights were on, but there wasn't a soul in sight besides the guards at the gate. This was obviously due to the party. I was sure everyone was partaking in their night of unhinged entertainment. We approached the guards. "State your business." "We hail from the Tavera family on business." "I am Plex, and this is John." "Ah, I understand. Please follow me." One of the guards seemed to be expecting us as he led the way into the estate. He walked us along beautifully paved roads and magical lights. With nobody around, the atmosphere was full of mysticism and serenity. Eventually we entered a large building. Within its halls were pairs of large double doors, each of them adorned with unique designs that seemed to represent the demeanor of their owners. The one we stopped at was a pair of doors that seemed luxuriantly decorated, yet weathered by time. It was a deep navy blue with inlaid gems that glistened like stars, but it clearly hadn't been taken care of for a while. Asterisk knock knock asterisk. The guard knocked. Esteemed Summoner Anderson, John has arrived. Just send him in already. There was an exasperated shout from within the room, yet muffled by the doors. The guard turned to me. The esteemed sir is named Maxwell Albarrane, and he has quite the temperament. Do be sure to muster your patience, because he has no qualms with kicking you from the estate if he gets angry. He is still one of our most esteemed teachers, however, so take full advantage of this opportunity. Right. Thanks. I gave the guard a nod as he pushed open the door. Plex smacked my shoulder as he turned. Have fun. Millimeters, I hummed while going inside, scanning the room as I did so. At first glance, it seemed like a magical lab. My nose was hit with a thick aroma of what I could only describe as herbal must. But at the same time, there was a fresh hint of alcohol. All around the room were desks, bookshelves, and various pieces of lab equipment like glass flasks, exotic plants, and animal parts stored in containers. The most eye-catching thing in the room, though, floated below the ceiling in the center of the room. It was a huge blue crystal dodecahedron that slowly rotated while shining soft light on the lab. Just the sight of that magical geometric figure spurred something within me. Other than that, the second thing I focused on was the man who slumped down in a chair, a large bottle in his hands that was still completely filled. It was still capped as he held it in his hands. His visage was gray, and he seemed to be brooding over something. Unlike everyone else, he didn't seem to be enjoying this holiday evening. He had a short beard and brushed back hair that was unkempt. He also wore navy blue robes above a nice suit. At the same time, his eyes were deep as they reflected the sight of the unopened bottle. For a while I stood by the door, unsure of what to do. It didn't seem like this man was in any mood to teach me anything. He just continued to stare at the bottle. Perhaps 5 minutes passed like that. Eventually, he closed his eyes and placed the bottle in a drawer of his desk. After slouching back once more while pinching the bridge of his nose, he muttered, "What do you know?" Absolutely nothing. I didn't sugarcoat things as I answered directly. It seemed to catch him off guard, since he glanced at me with slight incredulity. His eyes looked me over with criticism. "You come straight off the farm or something?" "No?" "Then straighten your damn back." "Oh." Realizing that I was slouched a bit from waiting around for so long, my abdomen tightened and my torso straightened. But even then, he didn't take his scrutinizing eyes off of me. He stared at me for several moments before opening his mouth. "What's your name?" "John Cooper." I gave my name, but I was also confused as to why he didn't already know it. Then again, neither of us had more than 1 day's notice about this. "Where do you come from?" I hesitated. After all, I didn't exactly know about any places of significance beyond this city, and I wasn't about to speak about something as outlandish as coming from another world. So I gave the name of the only place I knew the name of. A place called Ymir Village. "So you did come straight off the farm?" "Well, yes and no." I remained vague as he pried further. "How old are you?" 22 years old. "You were sent to me at the request of Patriarch Tavera. What is your affiliation with him?" "I'm a delivery man, and I helped him with a single job. It almost cost me my life, but since I came back, he said I would get some tutelage." "I see." He let out a small sigh before scratching his head. "You're a summoner? Have you gone through an activation ceremony?" "What's that?" "You really do know nothing. An activation ceremony is the first step all with crests take to properly initiate their powers. Some say that it's a process of enlightenment or a way to wake up your soul, but really, it's nothing more than infusing your crests with power in order to make your mind aware of it." "Oh. No, I haven't been through the ceremony." "Figures. But I have become aware of my crest. I've even used its power." His eyes sparked with the slightest hint of interest. "Tell me the details." "Basically, I was hit with a wave of invisible energy by Warlock, and afterward, I could see the 13 stars of my crest within my mind. I was even able to summon something, but it disappeared not long after I used it." "Energy? You mean mana?" You're telling me that being hit with a low-level mana wave actually activated your authority? I suppose. Through inference I could tell that the wave of invisible energy I was hit with was called a mana wave. I asked about what I didn't understand though. What's authority? An authority is what we call the levels of power one can achieve through cress. To be able to summon something means you have activated your first authority. And to think it happened by being hit with a mana wave. I see. What about mana? What is it? The invisible energy ever present throughout the world that allows one to call upon nature's elements. However, only warlocks can utilize mana. Summoners use what's called Psyche, the extra-dimensional power of the mind. Knights use vigor, the profound power of the body. Oh. It seemed the three different types of magi also had three different types of energy. In that case, they were very clearly divided by more than just their powers. So basically, I had awakened my first authority, or my first star, allowing me to summon items from another dimension using Psyche. That was where my knowledge stopped. It seemed Maxwell had also summarized the shallow depths of my knowledge, as he went quiet once more. And I suppose I wished he stayed that way. The next words to come out of his mouth were nothing but irritating. You're ignorant. I guess? An idiot who knows nothing. Not even common knowledge seems to have a place within that thick skull of yours. It's like you've spent your life intentionally being a dumbass, taking zero impressions from anybody who has ever spoken of magi within your presence. My gaze turned deadpan as he continued to insult me for something that wasn't my fault. While I understood his words from the standpoint of a native, I was still ticked off. Just as I was about to retort though, he stood from his seat, disappearing amidst a few of his bookshelves. After listening to the shuffling of paper and a few dropped books, he came back with 6 books with papers sticking out of them. There are 2 things you must learn as a summoner. First is what we call accumulation. I won't teach you any of that right now since you don't need it yet. So I will teach you the second thing. Since you are someone with absolutely no impression of summoning in the slightest, having come from some backwater village and having yet to even get your citizenship, I will teach you this. ****. He dropped the books on his desk. Now, while I was still irked by all his prior insults, I was beginning to understand that he would at least give me some valuable knowledge. Accumulation is standard. There is very little deviation from the normal formula, and the magisterium holds a legal monopoly on the distribution of the technique. But summoner calls, like warlock magic and knight martial arts, are diverse and plentiful. The Polaris family has their own sets of martial arts, magic, and calls. However, what I will be teaching you deviates from the standard. Picking up the topmost book of the pile, Maxwell flipped it open, his eyes scanning across the pages with a look of melancholy. Summoning is looked down upon, scorned as weak, the calls likened to nothing but a cane for the frail. And there have been some who have proven the world wrong, but they have been outshined by the multitude of warlocks and knights who have so frequently attained vast power. And summoners are not innocent, failing to better themselves like the warlocks and knights, failing to rise through adversity like they have, failing to innovate as they did over millennia. Which is why I have devoted my life to this work. A call to join the League of Disaster Magic and Apex Martial Arts. A call that makes bond limits obsolete. A call to bring down even the most powerful beings. It is the call of the fallen angel. Chapter 8. Maxwell spoke of his ambition and his life's work with great emotion. I could tell that he was deeply attached to this technique. Or, I should say call. Like a warlock's magic spell or knight's martial art, summoners had calls. The call of the fallen angel was something Maxwell himself had created. It wasn't a call that had been tested by time or used by anyone else. It also made me skeptical. I didn't know anything about calls, nor Maxwell who had created this. With my naivety, I couldn't verify its quality. Then again, within the Polaris family, he was an esteemed sir. I could at least understand that he wasn't blowing smoke up my ass and knew a thing or two as a summoner himself. In that case, I could trust his expertise. Especially since I knew nothing as it was. I was in dire need of something that would allow me to use my power. This also meant that, perhaps, he wasn't solely insulting me when he said I was ignorant, stupid, and a dumbass. Maybe that was necessary for me to be successful with this call, being a blank slate with no biases. Not that it made me less irritated. You have no use for common knowledge, not yet anyway. Since you have come to me as an empty vessel, I will fill you with the foundational knowledge of this call. You will learn things as necessary for you to use this call the way it was created. Alright. But how good is this call anyway? I'd at least like to know how it compares to something standard, like a call from the Magisterium. Standard? Please. He scoffed, as if I'd degraded his name. I was a summoner with 11 authorities, just shy of the pinnacle of this world. And I was a revolutionary in my field. If not for... No, you don't need to know about that. Just know that this call is something that will carry you to the top, so long as you have the talent and dedication. It is not something that anything of the Magisterium could possibly compare with. Then why aren't you in this call much more famous than you are? As I said, you don't need to know about that. Should you rise to a respectable level, perhaps you will come to find out yourself. And by then, the knowledge wouldn't affect your development. Now, take this book and begin reading. I will speak as you follow through with the text. He handed the book to me with care, prompting me to take it with a bit of curiosity. I couldn't lose anything by learning this, so I may as well get everything I could from Maxwell's tutelage. Especially if he was offering it for free. Oh, before we begin. Suddenly, Maxwell eyed me with a weird glint in his eye. It was shrewd, causing me to narrow my own. I will accept 3,000 coin a week for teaching services. Deal. Actually, after further consideration, I'm thinking 5,000 will suffice. What? Dropping all pretenses, I entered a heated negotiation with Maxwell. Only when we settled on 3,800 coin per week did I finally let out a relieved sigh. In all honesty, 3,800 coin a week was a massive amount of money for me. I had barely started working, and each job might only give a couple hundred coin. On top of food, housing, and all the money I would need to buy myself other necessities, I might not be able to pay it. At least, that was in the short term. If I were frugal for a while and managed to get past the next month or so, then I would be fine. Still, it seemed like I wouldn't be getting a new pair of clothes anytime soon. Thankfully, Maxwell was at least accommodating with everything else. It didn't seem like he had much of a schedule, so we agreed to meet in the mornings after the founders' market went dark and I was done with work. With that, he began his first lesson. Summoning wasn't as straightforward as warlock magic or night martial arts. Summoning involved contacting spirits from another dimension that summoners accessed through their minds. And yes, it seemed like even the weapons and gear I could summon, like guns and tomahawks, were spirits. How that worked, I wasn't sure. But Maxwell made sure that I thought of even inanimate objects as living beings with their own intelligence. I just went with it. After all, that was probably the least weird part about this whole thing. With that, he moved on to other more detailed teachings. First, he taught me that there were two types of summoning, communing and marriage. Communing was where one called upon the spirits for a temporary amount of time. This was what I did with the flintlock pistol. With Maxwell's call of the fallen angel though, I could create a communion with a spirit, and in real time, power it with my psyche. So long as the communion was active, I could wield the spirit, and it would return to the dimension when the communion was cut. This method of active communion was apparently unique to his call, though he didn't tell me what the standard method was. Then there was marriage. And not unlike what it was commonly known as, marriage involved creating a life's bond with a spirit. A marriage, he said, was to be treated as if I were to be married to a woman. The commitment would be lifelong, and not only that, but the spirit's life would be tied to mine. Should I die, the spirit would die with me. This made it far deeper than a standard communion, and was apparently where the specialty of the call of the fallen angel lay. With this system of marriage, I could create bonds with, technically, as many spirits as I wanted. This special bond also afforded both the summoner and the spirit the ability to share their powers in more dynamic ways. In this way, the spirits wouldn't merely be tools to be used, but an ally to cooperate with. However, the cost to marry a spirit was high, and not something to be treated lightly. To marry a spirit was to permanently remove it from the other dimension, attaching it to your mind and soul. If, while in battle, the spirit were killed, it would do great damage to your soul, no different from gouging out a chunk of it. Thus, marriage involved risk for both the summoner and the spirit. It was only to be done if the summoner truly had a deep bond with the spirit and could reasonably accept and guard against the risks. This meant that the number of marriages should be few. These concepts were easy to understand. However, the process to carry out these processes wasn't so. To properly commune with a spirit required a complex process called charming. This was basically spellcasting but for summoners. But charming just any spirit wasn't wise. For one, not all spirits were neutral or benevolent. Some were malicious, and communing with a malicious spirit could end badly should it revolt against you when you needed it to cooperate. So to sift through all the spirits of the dimension, Maxwell taught perhaps the most important and foundational piece of knowledge all summoners should know. It was called projection, something that was universal among all sorcerers. Of course, Maxwell's call had a unique way of projecting into the dimension of your authority. First, there was unassisted projection, which involved a superficial scan of the dimension with your mind. This could reveal details about some elusive spirits. On the other hand, there was catalyst projection, whereby the summoner turned a married spirit into a catalyst to allow a deep search into the dimension. This afforded them far greater abilities and details, allowing them to glimpse into the nature of the spirits they discovered. It was at this point that Maxwell stopped feeding me information. With the basics down, I understood that the first step I needed to take was projecting into the dimension of my first authority, or my first star. That way, I could properly and systematically discover spirits, charm them, and then commune with them. Of course, learning those things would come later. With the massive influx of information and the fact that I had yet to pay anything for this teaching, Maxwell sent me away. Agreeing to come back the next morning and bring a 500 coin deposit, I left the Black Spider Market. I was in a small daze as I left through the Polaris Gate. Everything that I had learned, while merely conceptual and superficial, opened up a whole new world. Getting hit by fireballs was one way to make me realize that this was truly a magical world. But actually learning about this magic and taking the first steps toward utilizing it was another thing entirely. Besides, just lecturing me on all that conceptual information had taken hours. While informative, Maxwell seemed to enjoy going on tangents. This naturally extended the duration of his lecture, and by now, the sun had already risen. Walking into the major plaza of the market, I could see the aftermath of the tri-monthly holiday. A few bodies were strewn across some tables, including two draped across the roof of a nearby building. Some maids and butlers were attending to these unconscious partygoers, hauling them off into the Black Spider Hotel. That was also where I was headed. Making my way to the front desk, I met the Keymaster, who was sitting back and reading a book. "Hello, Keymaster." "Ah, John. How was your time with the Polaris family?" "It went well enough, I'd say. My only issue now is how I'm going to pay the extortive fees Maxwell wants for his teaching. I mean, I've been in this city for all of a week and I'm still living in a hotel. I barely have a change of clothes too." "I see. Maxwell can be shrewd, but his knowledge is worth any cost you may incur. I may be able to assist you, however. Your coin, please." "Oh, here." Digging in my pocket, I retrieved the coin I was given upon entry. I also handed back the key. Taking both, the Keymaster's owl appeared on his shoulder once more. It looked at me, then the coin. After the coin glowed, the man flicked it with his thumb, prompting me to catch it. He also tucked the key into his coat, retrieving another. Unlike the previous copper one, this one was silver. "Your coin and key have been updated. Your new room has been allocated on the 12th floor. Since a little bird has told me that you plan on entering the magisterium, I have reserved the room for the time until then. I hope that eases some of your financial burden while you settle. Really? You're giving me a room for free? Naturally. Otherwise it wouldn't help you much, now would it? He smiled at me, making me scratch my head with a bit of embarrassment. Right. Thank you, Keymaster. I can only hope to pay this back in the future. It's of no consequence. Please, enjoy your stay at the Black Spider Hotel. He gave a charming bow, which I returned in kind. After that, I left to my former hotel room. It was there that I grabbed what little items I had, canceled my reservation, and took everything back to the Black Spider Hotel. In the elevator, I made my way to the 12th floor. It let me out in a hallway, which I walked down to eventually find a room marked with the number 22. My key was engraved with the same number, so I inserted it into the lock, turning it and hearing a click. The door swung open, revealing a room that was far more luxurious and spacious compared to the other hotel. It was like comparing a by-the-hour motel and a five-star room. This new room of mine was equipped with a full kitchen, a large bedroom with a window that overlooked the city, a full bathroom, and a comfortable living room. It had everything I could ask for plus some, and all of it was free. I was quite shocked that the Keymaster would give me something like this, let alone help me in any way. It wasn't like my living fees were that expensive, so I could have dealt with it. Still, this new home would give me great peace of mind. One less thing to worry about and a source of great comfort. For some time, I stared out the window of my room, seeing the sunrise gradually overtake twilight. It was shockingly beautiful as the rays of light filtered between buildings, reflecting off glass and the intricate construction of places like the Royal Palace. Combined with the successive events of the day, I was left in a daze. This really was a different life. And now, I was finally beginning to find my place in this foreign world. Although it was a bit jarring at first, I was able to acclimate to sleeping during the day. And when the sun began to fall, I emerged from my room. With a new bill to pay, I couldn't slack with my work. Heading to the warehouse, I met Plex and recounted what happened. He seemed happy for me, and since I told him that I needed jobs, he didn't bother me much. Heading to the job board, I plucked a few papers and read their contents. This delivery service of ours was both simple and difficult. It involved not just ferrying valuable items, but surviving any encounters with unsavory individuals. I had quickly learned that, even with our principles of mercy, I couldn't give any room to those who may want to cheat me. It was with this mindset that I tackled my jobs. From delivering illegal contraband to ferrying messages, the jobs I took were varied. None of the items we moved were normal. All of it could get you arrested should it be found outside the black market. Thankfully, I didn't have too difficult of a time. While some clients got aggressive, it was nothing I couldn't quell with a brandish of the knife. The most I had to do was land a square punch out a guy's mouth when he spit in my face after asking for payment. Another thing I kept track of was the time it took to complete a job. Some jobs required me to deliver items that were already stored in the warehouse, saving me a trip. But others required me to go between two clients to grab a package, deliver it, collect payment, and return to the source. With my knowledge of the market's layout, I wasn't the most efficient. But despite that and conflicts with clients, I was able to complete a job at an average time of an hour and a half. That meant I could complete 6 jobs if I worked non-stop for 9 hours. With some downtime in between, 6 jobs would make a 10-hour workday. Then there was the average pay. Some jobs were generous and had commission fees of around 400 coin. Those were usually a bit riskier, since you were either hauling obvious cargo or a small but valuable item. It would invite trouble from others besides the clients. Then there was the standard. The majority of jobs paid between 150 and 250 coin. After a full workday of 6 jobs, I came out with about 1200 coin. That was an average of 200 coin per job. Doing some simple math, that equated to 120 coin an hour. And my weekly bill of 3,800 coin divided by 120 came out to about 32 hours of work just to pay for my education. In all honesty, 32 hours of work wasn't bad. I could have my bill paid off in just a few days. Anything after that would go toward buying myself things like food and clothes. With that knowledge, I decided that 5 jobs per day, 6 days a week, was reasonable. 6,000 coin a week. That's pretty nice. What is? Libitus questioned from beside me. After a hard day's work, I ran into him at the bar we previously met at. That bar was apparently the spot for the delivery men of Plex's company to hang out. I explained to him all the numbers I had run in regards to my income and weekly bill. And for the most part, my plan seemed sound. But then, I suddenly remembered something that might make everything much more difficult. Crap. I forgot about taxes. Hey, how bad are the taxes here? I swear if I lose any more than a quarter of my paycheck, I'm gonna burn this city to the ground. Well, the taxes are about a quarter. At most a third depending on how much you make. But yet again, that's one of the perks of working in the black market. The ability to entirely disregard taxes. No shit? Hee-ha? I chuckled. In the long list of things I hated, taxes were definitely up there. To think I could just blatantly disregard them. I was beginning to love this job more and more. Oh, one more thing. I remembered something else. I still have to get my citizenship. You wouldn't happen to know anything or anyone that could help me with that, would you? As a matter of fact I do. Libitus took a sip of his liquor. The black market has everything, John. There's a guy here that handles that stuff. He pays off a customs agent, and all the applications he puts forward get accepted quickly. It basically bypasses all the bullshit you would have to deal with on the official route. Of course, you'll have to pay a high price, but it's worth it considering the money you're beginning to make. Right. So where can I find this guy? On Hillard Road. The place doesn't have a name, but it's known by its building number 333. Go there and ask for help getting a citizenship. That simple? Yup. The guy gets a lot of business, so it's become a proper business. I see. Thanks. I'll have to do that tomorrow. Right now, I need to get to class. With that valuable piece of information, I bid Libitus goodbye, heading to the Black Spider Market. Chapter 9. My second day of learning involved the more complex details of the call. Specifically, I needed to learn how to project into the dimension and search for spirits properly, even though I could already seen plenty as I was. Turns out, these dimensions went deep. What I could see was only what existed on the surface. Within each dimension, there were both weak and powerful spirits. It was the powerful ones that lurked in the dark, waiting to be discovered. Naturally, I wanted to commune with or even marry the most powerful ones. Taking several hours to do so, Maxwell taught me what was basically a spell. By weaving Psyche in a certain pattern, I could form a drone and dive deep into the dimension. This would allow me to project. But weaving my Psyche at all was difficult. Just calling on that invisible power in my mind was enough to frustrate me. It was like moving a new limb. It didn't listen to my commands, let alone move into a complex formation. Luckily, Maxwell had an exercise for that, one that stressed the manipulation of my power. Of course, the exercise also made me tired. It drained my mental energy, making me feel like I had worked for a full 24 hours after merely 2. It was a good thing that these classes were at the end of my day. When it was over and I left with mental exhaustion, I headed into my fancy room in the Black Spider Hotel and knocked out. Contrary to the exhaustion though, my night of sleep was rejuvenating. When I woke up, my mind felt amazingly clear and energetic. Even moving around my Psyche was easier, showing clear progress. And so, I went on with my day, my mood high and my steps light. Taking several jobs from the warehouse at the start of twilight, I headed into the Founders Market and made my way around. My deliveries consisted of 2 small boxes of hard drugs, a bag of jewels, a glass vial of a liquid I didn't ask about, and some lingerie for a nearby brothel. That last one was fun since I got a few kisses from the ladies there. Which was good, since my mood had been ruined earlier when someone tried to rob me of the jewels. I was able to fend them off with my knife and no small amount of blows, but I took about as much as I dished. My body was bruised and beaten, leaving me to finish my jobs in irritating pain. Well, nothing a hot lady from the brothel couldn't fix. After leaving the erotic place, I made one last stop. Hellard Road, building number 333. This is it. Finding the unnamed building I was looking for, I pushed open the carved wooden door. It led into a small entry room with a front desk, behind which was a mature yet sharp woman. She eyed me curiously as I walked up. "Hi, I heard that this place could help me with getting a citizenship." "It can. Our standard fee is 1500 coin. You must pay up front and there are no refunds." Ouch. I sighed in resignation, taking out 1500 coin. Although I had the money, I would have to work a bit of overtime to make up for it and still make Maxwell's bill. Over time, I had discovered the different denominations for coin. Coin was a blanket term, like dollars. And there were different types of coin. This world used silver and gold as its currency, only, the two metals didn't seem to have quite the rarity as on Earth. Silver coins were less valuable, and there were two types, the standard silver coin and the silver bullion. The silver coin was worth 1 coin, and the silver bullion was worth 10 coin. Then, the gold coin was worth 100 coin while the gold bullion was worth 1000 coin. I often got paid in gold coin and silver bullion, and only his Plex ever given me gold bullion, so I only had a few on me. I paid the clerk 1 such gold bullion and 5 gold coins, making for 1500 coin. She took them indifferently and handed me an application. "Fill out all these fields, and we will take care of the rest. The application will be submitted today and will be verified in 5 days. That is when you can come back and receive your official citizenship." "Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how long does it usually take?" "On average, 7 months. "Oh." She smirked while I sighed in amazement. Seems bureaucracy was a sloth in all worlds. Taking the application, I went and quickly filled everything out. It only asked for basic information, like my full name and date of birth. I didn't have to input anything like physical descriptions or the name of my parents. I did have to put down 2 important things though. Upon handing back my application, the clerk stamped my fingerprint and used a device to record my crest. Apparently it was highly illegal to hide someone's status as amigas, so if you had a crest, it absolutely had to be recorded. I didn't mind, anyway. It wasn't like someone could use it against me, and soon enough I would be entering the magisterium. It couldn't be hidden. With those things, I was finally done. It took no more than 5 minutes, and I would have my citizenship within the week. The black market sure was nice. Sending the application marked the end of my workday, after which I headed to the Black Spider Market and had another lesson with Maxwell. I continued exercising my psyche while trying to weave it into the projection spell I was given. At the same time, since I was a total newbie, I was taught general knowledge about knights and warlocks. Apparently, although they were all considered magi, each of the branches had completely different systems of magic. Warlocks were the spitting image of wizards. They had different spells that they could launch from their body, making them very versatile both in terms of combat and utility. This was also why they were considered the best of the 3 branches. Knights were, as their name implied. They were a magical branch of bodily martial warriors. Through cultivating what they called vigor, a knight could become stronger, faster, gain endless stamina, and pull off martial arts that resembled the powers of mythic gods. They were the second best. And then, at the bottom of the barrel lied the summoners. Considered the worst of all magi, they used psyche to call upon other dimensional spirits to fight for them. They couldn't make themselves stronger, and they couldn't cast any amazing spells. Their powers were entirely reliant on the spirits they summoned. That wasn't to say that summoners weren't strong. It was just that they had hard times fighting warlocks or knights at an equal level across all levels. They just seemed to be a step below everyone else. Maxwell knew that I would be entering the magisterium, and so he told me to prepare to face that kind of discrimination. But at the same time, he apparently abhorred the thought of allowing me to appear weak. He said that he would prepare me in the time I had before entering so as to not disgrace the summoner name, and more importantly, his call of the fallen angel. It was why he worked me to the bone, having me exercise my ability to manipulate Seika and stuff my brain full of information. At least I was getting my money's worth. After the first week of being in this new city, my schedule seemed to settle into place. My work became regular as I took several jobs a day. Occasionally I even got my hands on some of the higher-paying jobs. These weren't heavyweights, but since I was a newbie, these middleweight jobs most often got handed to the veterans. But work was constant, and knowing I had bills to pay, the others were generous. Once or twice a week I would get a job that paid a few thousand coin, giving me plenty of surplus and allowing me to spend a bit more. With the unceasing flow of cold hard cash, I got myself all the necessities I didn't have. Multiple pairs of clothing, a few accessories like pocket watches and hats, all the various items I needed to keep myself clean every day. All my needs were satisfied within a few weeks of working. I even paid back my small debt to Plex, making sure we were even. All my earnings that went above my weekly bills would become either savings or go toward buying me some luxuries. Other than that, after a few weeks, I was finally able to learn projection from Maxwell. On top of that, Plex began to receive jobs for the upcoming monthly auction. After about 3 weeks of exercising my control over Seika and trying to weave it, I was finally able to perform the projection spell. I was with Maxwell during the accomplishment. Use the newly formed drone to scout the dimension. Once you discover a spirit, it can't be forgotten or lost, so use your energy as efficiently as possible to seek out as many spirits as you can. I was silent as he spoke, focusing on the visions in my mind. As soon as the spell had been woven, I could feel as if my eyes were planted in that drone of Seika. I could control it, and I used it to fly through the dimension of my first star. I discovered some spirits immediately. Some were identical to my flintlock, and others were items like rapiers. But most importantly, I found ammo. Tons of ammo. Lead bullets and black powder packets littered the entire dimension. These would allow me to reload whatever flintlock guns I used. But perhaps even more than that, I was able to expose certain details about the spirits I saw. I could clearly see just how much Seika was required to establish a connection to them. Most were well within my limits. But there were some that were expensive. They were the powerful ones that Maxwell talked about, which got me curious. Along with projection, Maxwell had taught me all about communion that was required to utilize the spirits. So with my drone as the medium, I reached out to one of them. It was a flintlock pistol, but instead of a standard one, this one had a much larger and thicker barrel along with engravings on the wood body. It was unique, and when I made the handshake and initiated communion, I figured out why. The communion seemed to trigger an influx of memories from another time. In my mind, I could see a large man dressed in an old militia uniform. He rode on a horse and carried a rapier. On his hip was the flintlock pistol I saw. I quickly understood what time period these scenes came from. The Revolutionary War. A time when America fought for its independence from Britain. A time when firearm technology was in its infancy, yet becoming more important than ever. I saw as this loosely uniformed man rode alongside some soldiers of the Continental Army, all of them defending a village from invading redcoats. The two sides quickly entered a heated battle, the man on the horse swinging his rapier while making his way around the village. It was only after a while that his horse took a shot to the chest, unable to maintain itself and falling to the ground. The man jumped off and resumed battle on the ground. When on the ground, he resorted to using his unique pistol. When he fired, the pistol exploded with roaring flames. The heavy bullet was backed by an abnormally large amount of gunpowder, so much so that he actually managed to kill 2 men with a single shot after the bullet blasted through their bodies. And his skill with reloading was impeccable, even under pressure. He could pour powder and slam down another round while running before quickly lining back up another shot. The battle at the village lasted 4 hours, but this was not a heroic tale of victory. Instead, The Continental Army fought until they fell to the tactics of the British Army. The man with the unique pistol was one of the last to fall. In the end, he had taken 34 people with him, his pistol, aim, and reloading skill carrying him until the end. With that, the memories stopped. In the real world, I could feel a large and heavy object appear in my hands. I saw the pistol in its full glory, with even a few dried blood stains in the wood. It was heavy, cold, and loaded. And with its appearance, I could instinctively understand how to use it. My arms and hands aimed the pistol just as the man in the memories had. I could feel my body reflexively wield it. I had inherited his skills, the skills infused into the spirit of the gun. Amazing. What is that? Maxwell asked as he observed the pistol in my hand. As I had learned, summoners could conjure spirits from two different categories, hot and cold. Hot summons were living spirits like exotic monsters and animals. These were conventionally living beings, and they had intelligence that increased with every level. And cold summons were conventional weapons, like swords, spears, and shields. These were inanimate beings. My category was of the second type, and quite unfortunately, cold summons were regarded as the worst type of summons. So not only was I a lowly summoner, but I had cold summons. Thankfully, I knew that these cold weapons were anything but lowly or lacking in power. I gave Maxwell a vague explanation. This is a gun. It fires deadly projectiles, like arrows. I see. This is not a weapon that I recognize, though it looks similar to siege cannons. It's almost exactly like that, except dialed down. Anyway, I've successfully communed with a spirit. Yes, congratulations. Maxwell gave his praise while scrutinizing the pistol. It seems like a decently powerful spirit for your level. Millimeters one thing though. I was able to see the memories of this spirit. Is that normal? Memories? Maxwell rubbed his chin. Spirits, regardless of animation, do indeed have what we can consider minds. It has been documented, though rarely, that some cold summons carry with them remnant spirits, most often of warriors from another time or world. This gives special cold summoners some ability as they can inherit the skills of the previous warrior. Really? Then why are they still considered the weakest? Because you are inheriting the skill of a warrior, yet not his physique, endurance, strength, or power. You are a glass sword, sharp yet brittle. So even if you inherit the skill of the greatest warrior from another world, you couldn't hold a candle to even mid-level knights, since you lack what truly comprises a powerful warrior, which is the powerful body. I guess that makes sense. I could understand what he was saying, though it didn't make me feel good. This meant that, while I could attain powerful guns, they may not be able to carry me far. But Maxwell only smirked. Don't let it get to your head now. That logic only applies to normal summoners. With my Call of the Fallen Angel, you will be capable of so much more, disposing of preconceived limiters. You're lucky I even told you about normal summoners. Because if you let the biases of normality taint your mind and teachings, then you won't be able to use my call to its fullest extent. So forget about it. Oh. All right. His words picked my spirits back up. It seemed there was still more in store regarding this call. So I disregarded what he said earlier. It wasn't much longer afterward that we ended the session. I left for my room with both slight exhaustion and a sense of accomplishment. Now, I could properly project and commune with spirits, but perhaps unfortunately, the time to use them was nigh. It was the next day that Plex called in the few members of his company. This was also when I discovered that there were more than 3 of us. There were 5 of us. Myself, Plex, Libitus, and 2 others. One was Tovex, who I had briefly met alongside Libitus at a bar. The other was a woman who I knew nothing about. You know Tovex, and this is Rayla. Libitus named the woman I didn't recognize. After observing her, I could faintly sense a significant amount of power lurking within her body. I knew immediately that she was a Magus, though I didn't know what type. All I knew was that I would get my ass handed to me if I fought her. The introductions were short as I greeted the 2 of them. Afterward, Plex began a meeting. Not that it seemed important. Everyone was casual. The monthly auction is here, so I have jobs as always. We'll be moving things mainly from the Tavera family and the Polaris branch in the Founders Market. But we also have a special order, which is the reason I've called you all here. Plex smiled while taking out a paper and showing us its front. It had a large symbol on it, that of a skull with blood vessels hanging from its bottom and eye sockets that had chains drooping from them like tears. The trenches have requested our help. Chapter 10. Who are they? I didn't recognize the name Trenches, though they seem to be a mafia of the Founders Market. Plex smoothly answered my question. There are 4 dominating powers of the Founders Market: the Tavera family, the Clockwork Association, a branch of the Polaris family, and the Trenches. The Trenches, though, unlike the others, hold a small amount of territory and basically no organized influence. They are a gang, nothing more than a bunch of bloodlusting freaks who rule a portion of the market through fear and sheer power. Normally they stay in the dark, making their money mainly through the production of hard drugs. But occasionally they'll step out into the light, as they are now. Plex waved the paper. This job from them is rather sudden, which means they're doing something significant. We can expect to see some good stuff at the auction, but first, we need to move whatever cargo they have for us. Naturally, this involves plenty of danger, more so than usual. Simply stepping into their territory is sketchy, so 4 of us are going. Who? I'd like to go. I'm curious too. A few spoke their opinions, yet Plex seemed to already know his decision. I'll be taking John, Rayla, and Libitus. Tovex, you stay back on the outskirts of the territory. We may need your support when making our way out. All right. When do we start? Right now. Plex wasted no time, gathering whatever he needed. The auction is in 2 days, but I want to move whatever bomb the Trenches want us to handle as soon as possible. That means we leave in 10. With that, the 4 of us prepared to leave. It wasn't much later that we were on the street. For a while things were normal, nothing I hadn't seen several times before. But then, we stepped across what seemed to be the point of entry. Everything suddenly got dark as we left the rest of the market behind. What lay in front of us were ragged stone roads and beat-up buildings. They seemed to be more like shacks as the bristling stench of drugs and chemicals entered my nose. These run-down shacks were ever surrounded and inhabited by nothing but thugs. Not a single person I saw seemed to have any semblance of rationality hiding behind those eyes. It got really bad when I saw an orgy in the streets. If the people were at least good-looking I could bear it, but the sight of those humans who had their bodies degraded by drugs was unbearable. I put my hand on Libitus' shoulder and closed my eyes, bearing through the stench and letting him lead the way. O Lord, cleanse my tainted eyeballs of the horrid sight. Yea, that was pretty bad. Couldn't even get to the whorehouse first. Rayla agreed with me as we continued deeper into the territory. Thankfully it really was small as we quickly came upon the headquarters. It was there that we were greeted by guards, all of them carrying various creative weapons such as clubs with teeth sticking out of the wood or jagged cleavers. Still, I could tell that all of them were strong despite the rough appearances. Well, if it isn't Plex. I had a feeling you wouldn't waste time. A voice sounded at our arrival, one that was masculine yet carried a hint of shrill madness. A man who was leaning on a tilted and shattered pillar stood. My eyes were immediately pulled toward him, but not because of his appearance. Instead, it was like I could see him in my mind. His body carried with it bristling power, radiating an aura of unhinged psychosis. My hair stood on end as my chest constricted in fear. My breathing turned light as adrenaline ran through my system. This guy was dangerous. It felt like he could jump on me and tear me apart whenever he wanted. It only got worse when he looked at me. It was like his hands were reaching out with his gaze, his sharp fingers sinking between my ribs and tearing my chest open. The pain that came with it was enough to blur my vision. I didn't realize my body was frozen until Plex stepped in front of me. And with line of sight broken, I finally regained myself. My hand waved, calling upon the flintlock and raising it toward that madman while my breath turned laborious. I heard Plex's voice. "Don't scare the kid, please. He's new." "Ha ha ha. At least he didn't piss himself. Usually when people have their chest ripped apart, they tend to forget to keep themselves together. Ha ha. A feeling of weakness came over me while he laughed. At the same time, I saw Rayla move in front of me, pulling my face with her hand. You're bleeding. Just focus on me for a second. She raised a cloth to my face, wiping the blood that had started dripping from my nose. Looking into her eyes was a good way to divert my mind from the vivid illusions of that pain. Dare I say it was rather intimate as I felt her hands ensure that I was okay. Still, I felt a bad migraine come on when all things subsided. Not even her pretty face could distract me from that. Yeah, usually people wait until the final hour to come retrieve my packages. But you scurried right over here, didn't you? Hell, sometimes they don't even show up. Business is business, Ryan. I don't discriminate between clients. I guess it's what makes you so amazing then. That and how prompt you are in responding to my requests. I only had to wait an hour. Here. Looking up, I saw the madman toss a box. Plex caught it, but before he could stash it, Ryan smiled. Open it. I don't intrude on the privacy of my clients. What's inside is of no business to me. Well, I'm making it your business. Open it. With the man insisting, Plex could only comply. Popping the lock, he gradually opened the container. The four of us looked inside, and we saw a neat pile of black pills. If not for their uniform shape, I would have mistaken them for small pebbles. Those are neat little things called overkill pills. Eat one and your body will become a torrent of power that amplifies your output by several-fold. Warlocks are uninhibited from casting all the spells they can, knights are spurred by seemingly infinite strength, and even summoners are able to call upon countless spirits. Of course, the aftermath is just as violent as the best owl. The survival rate is currently 0. Ryan chuckled lowly in excitement. It was Libitus who commented first. The army is going to buy the shit out of these. Right? I'm going to be rich. It will multiply the combat ability of our front lines. Just imagine thousands of soldiers taking these pills and massacring the enemy. He laughed maniacally with ambitious words. Plex closed the box at the same time. Then, Rayla lifted my slouching body, whispering to me softly. Get ready to go, kid. You know it's going to be rough on the way out. Shit. I cursed while spurring my body. My head throbbed, but right now, that was probably the least of my worries. As if reading my mind, Ryan retrieved a bag from his waist. He smiled at us while throwing it. When Plex caught it, we could all hear the familiar clangs of metal coin. Your pay, Sir Delivery Man. 120,000 coin, plus 30,000 for hazard pay. Holy hell. I couldn't help but blurt out. 150,000 coin. That was a massive amount of money. How long would it take me to save that kind of coin? Even then, Plex merely gave a courteous smile. We appreciate the generosity. We will deliver this to the auction house as soon as possible. I admire the confidence in your ability to make it out of here at all. Well, that is why I called you. Ryan left with those words. And when he disappeared, I raised my gun. My communion with this spirit gave me the skills of that soldier from the Revolutionary War. So when I saw a man jump at us from atop a building, my arm reflexively moved. Asterisk bang. Asterisk. It fired, leaving behind a plume of smoke. And the body fell limply to the floor, a hole through its throat. For a few moments, everything was silent, until Rayla spoke. That was kind of hot. What was that? That was how we negotiate with criminals in my homeland. Fuck. My head hurts. Let's get the hell out of here. Amen, brother. Libitus laughed while reaching under his coat, retrieving a metal whip with segmented blades on it. Rayla also took out what looked like a small staff. On its end was an arch that cradled a floating heart that pulsed as if alive. Around it, fancy lines appeared. Plex disappeared while smiling. I got the money. See you all at the warehouse. Asshole. I yelled while reloading. It only took several seconds as I easily retrieved a bullet and powder from the dimension, slamming everything down in the barrel. At that moment, several other of those psychos came running at us from all directions. Libidus lashed out with the metal whip, Rayla cast some spells that spit out sharp blades of air, and I took aim. Looks like we're earning our money today. Ugh. Oh yay, that's tasty. Having fun yet? Libidus snickered while hoisting my arm over his shoulders. He bore the weight of my body as we walked through the Founders Market. One of my eyes was closed, a thick liquid streaming over it. I smelled smoke and my tongue tasted iron. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been drenched in my own blood like this before. Am I really not gonna die? Don't worry. Rayla's healing is good enough to keep you alive. Trust in my experience. I see. You have my sympathies. I laughed as we arrived at a building. Kicking open the door, Libidus dragged me into a bright area. It looked like a hospital with sterile white tiles and beds. I looked through my one eye as a nurse came striding over. Before she could even speak, Libidus flicked a gold bullion at her. We both need treatment. A few stab wounds and some blunt trauma. We also have another coming, a woman with red hair. Understood, sir. Right this way. She quickly led us to a couple nearby beds. Libidus lifted me into it before he set himself down on another. Help him first. Don't worry, sir, we can help you both. The nurse reassured Libidus, though she did hurry over to my side and pull open my clothes. My body was riddled with lacerations and a few stab wounds, along with huge nasty bruises on my limbs. The fight out of the trenches was not an easy one. Without Rayla and her healing, I would have died. I killed no small amount of people, but not every shot was precise. Despite the large caliber, those freaks didn't immediately go down unless you hit a vital spot. And smoothbore flintlocks didn't make marksmanship easy. If I didn't have the inherited skills from that man, there was no way I would be here now. After seeing my wounds, the woman reached into one of her pockets and retrieved a red pill. She plopped it into my mouth, the pill instantly dissolving. There wasn't even anything to swallow. Instead, a hot energy spread through my blood vessels. It gave me energy and dampened the pain, even stopping the bleeding of my wounds. At that time, another doctor came over and took a look at me. The man in a white coat laid out a case of tools on a nearby tray. Before he got to work though, he asked, "Is it safe to put you to sleep, or shall I operate while you are lucid?" I didn't respond, looking over to Libidus. He nodded. "Go ahead and sleep. We're fine." "All right. Then I'll get to work." With that confirmation, the doctor fed me another pill. This one dissolved like the last one, and just like that, I turned drowsy before passing out. When I woke up, my body was racked with a dull pain. When my eyes focused, I turned my head. I could see Libidus on the bed beside me, his back propped up and reading a book. Turning the other way, I saw a red-haired girl asleep on another bed. It was Rayla. I had only known her for a few hours, but my impression of her was good. She was pretty, and unlike the orange hair that was usually associated with redheads on Earth, her hair was actually a blood red. In this world, some people had deep-colored hair like that. While she wasn't jaw-droppingly gorgeous, she was still pretty. She was also mature, perhaps a bit older than me. And as I had discovered, she could be a bit flirty. It was fun. Her wounds were a bit lighter than yours. But with her healing powers, she'll recover just fine. Yours were still the worst of us. It's good that your body is resilient. Libidus commented. Taking my gaze off the sleeping Rayla, I closed my eyes. Yay, not like it hurt any less. Still, I don't think I've ever pushed myself like that before. I didn't even know I could go that far. You learn things about your limits during battles like those. They are valuable experiences, so long as you survive them. Oh, also. I looked at Libidus while he smiled. Your cut. 25. Like. Yay. None of us expected him to pay that much, but hey, we earned it. Just don't spend it all in one place. Right. I was a bit dazed. I just earned 25,000 coin. That was more than everything I had earned up until this point. Oh, we also have more deliveries to do over the next couple days. The auctions are always the time for big business. You can expect this kind of stuff every month, especially when the major auctions come around. Of course, this was a special case. Singular payouts aren't quite as big and not nearly as dangerous. But you can expect to make tens of thousands over a mere 3-day period during normal auctions. I like this job. Yay, it's pretty good. Libitus chuckled and agreed. And not long after, Rayla roused from her sleep. I could see a few lines of stitches on her lithe body, but they had already healed much better than mine. She turned, her eyes focusing on me. Hey sweet cheeks. How's your ass? Oh God, this is not becoming a thing, is it? You bet your tight ass it is. She giggled as I rolled my eyes. One of the several slices on my body happened to be on my butt cheek, which she had to heal so I could keep running. It was embarrassing. Even Libitus laughed. She snickered a bit as I diverted my gaze. Don't worry, hun. I've healed worse. Besides, you've got nothing to be embarrassed about. You're quite well endowed. Thanks. So are you. Ho ho, cheeky boy. Her eyes curved as we smiled at each other. A few minutes later, a doctor came over and checked us all out. Once he gave us a painkiller pill and cleared us, we all grabbed our stuff and left. Our first stop was the warehouse. It was there that we saw Plex. But he wasn't in perfect shape. His clothes were bloodied as he slumped in a chair. The only reason we knew he was alive was because he was drinking a bottle of wine. Oh, you all finally made it. Are you okay? I've been worse. Most of my wounds are internal, so I can only rest to heal. Oh, here are your cuts. Saying that, he took out 3 bags and threw them to us. I caught mine and opened it, seeing 25 gold bullion coins. They were worth 25,000 coin. A stupid grin surfaced on my face. It felt nice, being somewhat rich. And the jingle of gold made my wounds hurt less. Rayla. Plex called while taking a swig of wine. Take John to the Polaris Bank tomorrow and have him open an account. Do it under the company name. He can't be working around with that coin all the time. All right. For now, I just need to head home. Walk with me? She waved me over while walking out. I glanced at Plex, who seemed to be getting drunk, before striding out with her. We stepped onto the cold streets. Since we always worked at night, seeing nobody out was normal. Though, the sun was beginning to creep up, signaling dawn. Where are you staying? She asked, prompting me to point to the center of the city. The Black Spider Hotel. You have a room there? Yay, the keymaster is letting me stay there until I get into the magisterium in a few months. I see. I have an apartment that's in that general direction, though I can't say it's as luxurious. I only had a hotel before, so I understand. I'll walk you home. Why thank you. Don't you go getting any funny ideas though. She pat my cheek with a coy smile, making me chuckle as we walked. You can kick my ass, so I don't have any plans to. And if I couldn't, what would you do to me? How might you ravage me with those funny little thoughts? Hey now, I'm an upright gentleman. No matter how fantastically impure my thoughts are, I wouldn't go ravaging a woman unless she wanted it. Ha! Well, at least you're honest about how horny you are. She smacked my butt as we arrived at the apartment. Alright, I'll meet you tomorrow at around 6. Since you're already there, just find me at the entrance to the Polaris Bank. Afterward, you'll probably be working with me when we get these jobs for auction deliveries. Plex requires us to work them in pairs for safety. Okay. Good night then, John. You did well today. She ruffled my hair with a surprisingly caring and soft voice. I waved as she disappeared into the apartment. Then, I made my way to my room at the hotel. Chapter 11. After eating a meal in the morning, I found Rayla at the Polaris Bank. The process to open an account was easy, but the reason more people didn't have one was due to the fact that you needed to open an account under the name of a verified business. Those in the black market evaded taxes in just about every way. Since most currency was tangible and because nobody in the black market wanted to pay taxes, it was difficult for the kingdom to enforce it. But this also meant that banks which didn't enforce tax laws were rare, since they were an institution that could be easily and formally attacked by the kingdom. There was a slew of issues that these banks had to deal with, and as a result, they only accepted clients who were verified by a company that worked in the black market. Of course, the Polaris Bank was even more strict. Not just any black market company could do business with them. But Plex had enough of a reputation to get just about anything apparently, so his company and employees could register with this prestigious institution. The Polaris Bank was nothing to joke about. According to Rayla, it handled enough money to rival the entire kingdom in sheer monetary throughput. That was because the richest people in the black market let their finances be handled by this bank. Naturally, this made Polaris an even heavier behemoth than I initially thought. The place wasn't overly luxurious, but it still looked like a palace when I walked into it. Marble floors inlaid with gold, huge hall was adorned with paintings or statues, and the most courteous clerks I've ever interacted with. Rayla carried with her the proven identity of the company. Plex's delivery service was formerly known as Divine Distribution. It even had a crest, which was one of the things required to prove the identity. After that, it wasn't long after that I was able to open an account. And I was a bit surprised by their system of profit. Basically, I had to pay a certain amount of money to buy a certain sized account. For the lowest tier, they would store 500 gold bullion for me, which was 500,000 coin. And it would cost 0.5% of the total storage, 2.5 gold bullion, every month in order to keep the account open. It was yet another bill on top of Maxwell's, but nothing I couldn't handle. Considering my pay, I was still profiting amazingly. Plus, that wasn't considering the perks of being a client of the Polaris Bank. After opening an account, I immediately deposited all the spare coin I had on me. With last night's profit of 25,000 coin along with almost a month's worth of working, 33,228 coin has been deposited into your account. That's what the clerk told me, and the number had me giddy for a bit. Rayla giggled from beside me as the clerk left to finalize things, causing me to be curious. Hey, how much do you have stored? Do you really want to hear that number? I do. Close to 30 million coin. Huh? I gawked. That was 30,000 gold bullion. I asked with anticipation. Does this job really make you that much? God no. For a while I was in the military, which made me quite a bit more after I hit the high ranks. And when I left I was referred by a friend to work at the Clockwork Association. I made even more there before eventually settling in Plex's company. So while I still make decent money, it's nothing amazing. Wow. I slowly nodded as my mind drifted. How old was Rayla? She looked young, no older than 30. But her words told me that she had many years of experience. And considering that this world was full of magic, it wasn't crazy to think that lifespans were longer. Kind of like the mythical elves that could retain their youthful appearances even at old ages. I suddenly wanted to ask how old she was, but that wasn't very tactful. So what are you? 60? Instead I guessed, earning a snide smirk. You're going to do great with girls when you enter the magisterium. I happen to be a blunt person, especially when I know that you're probably more like half that age. Something like that. At the very least, I'm not that much older than you. I'm 22. Really? This time she looked at me with surprise. I scratched my roughly shaven chin that betrayed my age. I often got told that I looked older than I was. So when I smiled at Rayla, she scoffed and smacked my chest. You kids these days. Hey now, you're not that much older, right? Shut up. I make more money than you. Oh no, my fragile ego. We laughed a bit until the clerk came back. Here you go, John Cooper. The money has been stored and your card has been prepared. Here. The clerk handed me a card. When I felt it, I realized how unique it was. The border of the card was made of gold metal, and its body was like a window that revealed a flowing black film. On this film, I could see the symbol of the Polaris Bank. The clerk explained how to use it. All your money is stored within this bank, but through this card, you can retrieve any amount of your money, at any given time, and in any denomination. So if you desired, you could pull out 33 gold bullion, 330 gold coin, 3,300 silver bullion, or 33,000 silver coin. It all comes from that card right there. Simply tap the symbol and designate how much you wish to retrieve. Oh. Doing as he said, I tapped the golden symbol with my finger. Then, 4 sliders appeared. I designated a single gold bullion, and with a confirmation, the black film fluctuated. You can simply dump out the coin or reach in and pull it out. Oh. I smiled as I reached into the black film, feeling the coin and pulling out the bullion. Cool. As your company is a platinum-level client, you have been granted a gold-level account and card. This means that not only can you retrieve your coin, but you can also deposit your coin simply by inserting it into the card at any time. And should you deposit more money and reach the next level, you would be granted a platinum-level card that comes with even more functionality. Right. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. If you require anything else, just let me know. The clerk left as I continued to play with the card. It was amazing how I could simply throw the coin in and out of the card. It was literally a portal for my money. Magic is amazing. Rayla smiled as my playful attitude. Alright, be sure you put all your payments straight into that card when you get them. You don't need to get robbed and lose everything. Also, it only works with your specific crest, so don't worry should other people get a hold of it. Oh, even cooler. With that, the two of us left the bank. Our next stop was the warehouse. There, we only found Plex, who looked much better than yesterday, yet still beat up. He smiled at us. Hey, you two. Have fun at the bank. This card is cool. Yes, it is. And you'll be using it plenty today. Your jobs are on the table. All of them need to be done by morning. Walking over, Rayla and I saw 8 sheets on the table. All of them required us to head to a location, grab an item and our payment, and deliver the item to the auction house. For these jobs, our clients were located all across the city. Some were close, some came from the Founders Market, and others were farther away. I could already tell it was going to be a long night. We should get started. Rayla sighed while scooping up the papers. Our warehouse was located just outside the city center, putting us right in between the Black Spider and Founders Markets. Making a quick decision, the two of us decided to handle 3 of the jobs that came from the Founders Market. Of course, they were also the most dangerous. Anything going to the auction was a valuable item, and these items were most vulnerable while in transit. So us delivery men, while neutral and immune in the black market, were often targeted by those who didn't care. Being neutral and immune simply meant that, should we kill those from, let's say, the Clockwork Association after a deal gone wrong, we wouldn't be systematically hunted. Conflicts were always considered personal and wouldn't escalate. But again, there were those who simply didn't care. We ran into a few of such people after we had picked up our 3rd item. While crossing through an alleyway, Rayla and I were suddenly surrounded by 4 men. 2 carried swords while the other 2 seemed to be warlocks. I smiled and sighed while looking at the leader. Hello, gentlemen. How can we help you? Drop those packages. Oh, sure thing. Here's the first one. Asterisk bang asterisk. An explosion rang out as I fired my flintlock. The man in front of me froze for a few seconds before falling to his knees, a large hole now in his chest. I turned to the others with a smile. Who wants the second one? They were silent for a moment before running off, disappearing from our sights. Rayla chuckled as we continued walking. How bold of you. After escaping from the trenches yesterday, I've become severely desensitized. Besides, killing 1 and scaring 3 off is better than making them think they have a chance and having to kill all 4. Still, I'd rather not have to at all. Yay, I understand. But that's just how the black market is. Don't feel guilty. She pat my back, and we continued on our way. Fortunately, everything after that was uneventful. Perhaps we got lucky, but we delivered everything to the auction house without a hitch. I also got paid another 14,000 coin even after dividing the profits with Rayla, putting my total savings at nearly 48,000 coin. With that, another day ended. The following day was yet again filled with package deliveries. Rayla and I only exchanged a few hostilities with some unsavory individuals. And while the fights generally ended quickly, both of us did end up exchanging blows that hurt like hell. I had plenty of wounds that were still in the process of healing, and getting punched or kicked only ended with my stitches getting broken. After killing several and scaring off the rest, we finished our deliveries, headed to the hospital, and got fixed up. Not even those difficulties could put a damper on our mood though. I didn't know what it was, but Rayla and I continued to have fun with each other. The jokes were smooth, the topics kept flowing, the banter was witty. We just clicked. The two of us seemed like best friends even though we had only known each other for a couple days. Of course, there was still plenty we didn't know about each other. It was hard keeping myself from alluding to Earth, and although Rayla had told me something about her former occupations, she never spoke about it in more detail. And I could tell that she had something to hide. I noticed the few times that we got on the topic of relationships. She often poked at how I had no girlfriend, so I would poke back, as I naturally didn't see a boyfriend or husband with her. She played it off, but I could tell how her mood went down. That only happened once, and I tactfully never touched the topic again. Not that she stopped telling me to go get a girl. While we walked, she would often scout some hot ladies, mention how big their boobs were, and tell me to talk to them. I would always refuse, of course, but it was still funny. So another day passed, and finally, it was time for the auction. The black spider market was always flooded during the day of the auction. Thousands of people would flood in from all over the city, even from beyond the city, to be here for the auction. After all, while it wasn't the biggest auction in the kingdom, it was definitely the most valuable. But this month's auction was in a weird spot. The auction following the big quarterly auction was always smaller since the most expensive items were just sold off. That would usually mean that there were little people. But there weren't. In fact, Rayla told me that the number of people was rather high. There was only one reason for that, and the man himself had messed with me while in the trenches. As the dress code was strict, I ended up spending close to 3,000 coin on a nice suit. Rayla had helped me pick it out just before coming to the auction house. It was a simple black suit with gold-threaded embroidery and designs. My white shirt was covered with a black vest, and Rayla had me buy a large trench coat. Apparently that was the style here. All the clothes were supposedly enchanted in some way, allowing them to fit to the user. They were also built with attack-resistant fabric. The trench coat could eat an entire spell and keep me safe. Though, these features were still limited. As things got more expensive, people stopped tracking prices by coin and more so by gold bullion. So while I could buy a coat and clothes that were defensively amazing and had awesome features like self-cooling and cleaning, they would cost a few dozen gold bullion. That was for another time. I felt rather amazing as I walked with Rayla into the auction house. We eventually found Plex and the rest of the company before heading to a suite. It was a suite bought by the Tavera family. There, I once again met the patriarch. Goodness John. How many people have you killed in the last month? You feel very different from the newbie you were when Plex first found you. The 24 new scars on my body would agree with you. I smiled as we shook hands. The older man in front of me stroked his whitening beard after separating. Say, how did things go at the Polaris family? I haven't heard anything. Amazing, actually. Maxwell is an interesting teacher, but what he teaches is good stuff. His call had saved my life a few times now. Wait, Maxwell. Al-Bahrain. Yay. That's who I was taken to. The patriarch frowned before turning and looking at Plex. Plex shrugged while munching on some snacks that a maid had brought around, causing the patriarch to shake his head. I see. Well, if it's Maxwell, you can't go wrong. Get as much out of that man as you possibly can. He's getting as much out of me too. I mean, nearly 4,000 coin a week just for lessons. Yeah, it's really far more valuable than that. But I will agree that he is a shrewd man. Who are you calling shrewd? We suddenly heard a voice, turning to see a tall man draped in navy blue robes. It was Maxwell, and his presence shocked several people, including the patriarch. Maxwell. I didn't expect to see you here. I had no plans to stop by, but my delinquent student has been missing classes. The summoner approached with a sharp eye, looking me over before huffing. Getting into fights? It pays for your classes, so yay. I'm sorry I've missed recently, but work has been literally kicking my ass. Now I know that I'll be busy during the auctions. I figured. Well, battles will help with your communions anyway. In fact, maybe you should get into more. You. Maxwell suddenly pointed to Plex, who hummed in confusion. Send this kid to whatever jobs you have in the trenches. What? That place is a good training ground. As lawless as it is complex. Bwahaha. Plex started laughing as my face fell. No way in hell am I going back to that hellhole. Especially not with the shitty weapons I have now. Yes, you'll need to be stronger, attain better summons. So here. Maxwell reached into his pocket and took out a large crystal and a small book. I took both as he explained. Follow the formations in the book and use that white crystal to cultivate your crest to the next authority. I thought you couldn't do that without the magisterium. They'll overlook it if it's just 1 or 2 levels. It might even help you since you're a bit too old to be entering as an authority 1. Oh. I'll omit this week's pay, so don't come back until you get your second authority. Remember, the faster you advance, the higher the chances of your survival. And Plex, if I find that he isn't in the trenches, I'll be paying you a visit. Do not inhibit my teachings. Yeah, yes sir. Plex chuckled heavily as Maxwell turned to leave. Rayla pat my back in sympathy. It was nice knowing you, John. Shut up. I should take you with me. No thanks. I've paid my dues. And hey, the jobs for the trenches at least pay well. Contrary to what people believe, those gremlins are rich. She laughed as I contemplated how difficult the coming days were going to be. Not long afterward, the auction began. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to officially announce the beginning of the 4th monthly auction. Tobe continued.